I'm basically just going to share my top 10 tips for training and motivation. So I've been a coach now for 15 years. I started Her Time in 2004, which then led to His and Her Time, which you will hear about as I go through my talk tonight. And then this led on to Adventure Time Travel. So over this time, I've been privileged to see so many people change their stories and achieve wondrous things, which led me to a film that I've recently produced, and it has been seen worldwide now, and it is all about ordinary people achieving extraordinary things. So as I go through tonight, I want you to think about small steps, because small steps can make massive differences over time. So I'm just going to play the trailer from my movie, I'm Not a Runner. And while I do this, I encourage you to do your squats or do a plank or move.
My gut reaction when you talk about running is, ugh.
I'm not a runner and I'm doing a marathon.
I train 100 people a week. There's about 60 that are going to be coming to the New York Marathon with me. Part of the challenge is changing people's story.
I'm nearly 73, so that's old.
I could only run 20 or 50 metres and I'd stop and walk and catch my breath.
A marathon's a bit of a pinnacle to push through a whole lot of barriers.
I'm struggling with self-doubt, whether I'm enough to do the run, whether I'm enough to do anything.
I don't think people understand something until they experience it.
It's surreal, you can't believe you're actually there.
Make it happen, baby!
Your body just goes, okay, now we're getting serious.
I was worried about making the rest of the journey.
And it was just this constant battle.
How many kilometres are there in a marathon?
1 foot, next foot, that's all I was thinking.
I just want to get to the end.
The real heroes are really all those runs that take the longest.
We're always much stronger than we believe we are.
It's just one day. It's just a little run. Or a big one. Or the one that takes you out.
I'm Not a Runner is available through my website, but what you will see in here are 5 people who I've trained, and they basically went from their couches to the New York Marathon. So they were not runners. That's why it's called I'm Not a Runner. Basically, over all these years, people always come up to me and say, I'm not a runner, because I'm very passionate about running. So my tip number 1 is to have a goal. So as a coach, I always want to understand what someone's goal and purpose is. So when I started training people in 2004 for Her Time, 90% of people I found out came to me because they wanted to lose weight. So 90% of people were just fixated on losing weight. I knew that exercise provided so much more than just weight loss. I knew it provided strength, empowerment, confidence, and so many different things. So I undertook to challenge these people to physical challenges. And we basically started as a little group. We started challenging, and I say ourselves because I was challenging myself at the same time, to little events, little activities, things that we could track. We entered things like the Mother's Day Classic, the City to Bay, and we nurtured and we encouraged and we supported each other through these events. But most of all, we didn't care about failing. There was no failing in them. If we walked it, we all celebrated. So as we went through these, we started giving each other this hope and glint that maybe we could progress even further. So this also incorporated our health and different areas of health. And by a few years, maybe we were running half marathons. And at this stage, the men started getting jealous as well. And some of the men convinced me to start His and Her Time. So I did, because I was missing basically half of the market. But they wanted to feel as good as these women were feeling. So that was a really interesting stage for me, because basically the people in my group started concentrating on how they were feeling, their strength and their power. And all of a sudden that weight loss thing that we hear all the time just dissipated, and people were celebrating the success of their body. You know, we need to have gratitude for what we can do rather than what we can't do. So we were concentrating on what we can rather than what we couldn't. So that's my tip number one. And I do have a testimonial from one of my clients who is a close friend, and I say was a close friend because she sadly passed away, but she was like a mentor to me. And she started with me on day one of training. And I want to share to you because it is so beautiful and depicts what I have described about goals. So bear with me. The emphasis at her time was always on achievement in terms of what our bodies could do rather than how we looked. Together, we were greater than the sum of our parts. I couldn't run 1 kilometre when I started training with Anna, but before long she encouraged me to challenge myself, and I wondered if maybe I could run the City to Bay. For those that don't know, that's a 12-kilometre event. Others had had the same question, and we entered as a team. We cheered each other on through training, along the course and over the line. Most of us never imagined we'd be able to complete such a long run. The thing is, there was no sense that we had to be pushing our limits. Instead, Anna invited us to be curious about what we might be able to do and what we might be capable of if we gave it a go. I never felt that I had anything to prove, but my curiosity was piqued. If I could run 12 kilometres, I wondered if I could run a half a marathon. That distance, a half marathon, seemed impossible, but then so had the City to Bay. We were learning from Anna, slowly but surely, how ordinary people do extraordinary things. So Heather and I wanted to write a book about this, but sadly she passed before we could. Hence the movie, I'm Not a Runner. I wanted to show the world exactly what Heather had said and what we had learnt as a small community. We needed to show that ordinary people could achieve extraordinary things. Hence, the movie is actually dedicated to Heather. Another example of having set a goal is Namara Lee, who is in the movie. So I encourage you to watch it. Namara Lee's story is quite extraordinary. She was a stay-at-home mum with 3 children. She was housebound, full of anxiety, and had never exercised. She took 2 years to come out to one of my classes. One of her friends who had been training with me for a long time tried to convince her for a very long time to come out. And she really didn't want to. She didn't believe in herself. She didn't believe in her body. She was very embarrassed about being outdoors. Anyway, she was finally convinced and she came. And on that first night, she went home and realised how strong she actually was. She was empowered, she felt great, and she came back. So we set these little goals with her. And at that time, Adventure Time Travel, which is one of the businesses I run, which takes people to the New York Marathon each year. So we're an international travel operator that can offer guaranteed packages into the New York Marathon each year. So we had these tickets and her husband really wanted to go and run. So Namara Lee was excited because she just wanted to go over and be a part of being at New York. She wanted to see New York. So we said to Namara Lee, why don't you just come with us? And if you're going to come, why don't you just enter the New York Marathon? Because you can walk the whole thing, and then you'll be part of this amazing race, because the New York Marathon is actually one of the best things that you can ever do. The New York Marathon, without a doubt, is the best. I've run 28 marathons around the world, and I absolutely loved it. Anyway, we convinced her, and she there was no failing for her because she knew she could walk. But the long and the short of it is that she trained and she ran the entire marathon. So once again, she wasn't scared of failing. There was no failing, but she also had a goal. Had I said we'd do a local event marathon, I don't think she would have actually said that she'll come, but because it was something that was meaningful to her, had purpose, and was exciting, she came. So number one tip from me as a coach is get a goal. My rest of my tips aren't so long, so just I'll move on to tip number 2. So tip number 2 is small steps. So what we need is to do small, consistent actions over time. And then have small goals underneath your main goal. And enjoy the process. Do not get obsessed with the outcome. I have so many people come to me as a coach and they come up with these times. I want to do a 4-hour marathon. And then they do the marathon and they might do it in 4 hours and 3 minutes. And then they sadly get really disappointed by their time. But they forget all the journey that got them there. And that's really important to understand, that there is a process, there is a journey, and we should be celebrating ourselves because we never know what's around the corner. So I've got another person who I've trained for the last 12 years who I'd like to speak about here, and that's Chantel Peacock. And now she started with me 24 kilos heavier than she is now. She couldn't run 1 kilometre, but she was so enthusiastic. She was, definitely at the back of my pack of my training group at his and her time. But she always had a smile on her face, and she never compared herself to anyone else. She just celebrated every step of her way. So she celebrated, she decided to sign up to the City to Bathe, and she did the 12 kilometres in an hour and a half. So that's roughly 7 minutes 30 per K. So most people I see who get to the end of the City to Bathe go, oh, I could have done this and I could have done that, and I probably could have if I didn't stop at that drink station, or my hammy or my something happened, and there's the excuses that come out. But not Chantel. She had the smile on her face. It felt like she'd run the Olympics. She thought she was the ants pants, and she was. So she had every right to celebrate. Now, every time since then, what Chantel has done is put small steps in place, and she's progressed herself. And she progressed herself to achieve other goals in her health. So healthy food, healthy living, healthy habits, incidental exercise. But she also increased her running. So she is now probably one of the best amateur runners in South Australia. And now she's 45. So she's running faster now than she was at 35, and definitely running faster than when she was 18. So never give up hope, put small steps in place, and never limit yourself. So think big, and then just put these small goals underneath. So tip number 3, which I think is a really important one, is to get yourself a coach. A coach provides accountability, advice, knowledge. They've invested probably the last, so many years getting all that knowledge, and they've studied, and they're going to share that with you. So you're very lucky to get all of that information. They will be interested and they'll be invested in you because they also want you to succeed, because that's what they want as a coach, and they'll offer you support. So I have a coach for myself. I have a coach for presentations, Lisa McCaskill, and she helps me with that. I've got a business coach, I've got a running coach, I've got all sorts of mentors. I've got a doctor who helps me with my health. So I really encourage you to do that and not be afraid of investing in that. I run online training programs for people, marathon programs. I run all sorts of different programs. So, find someone that you resonate with. I really encourage you to invest in that and invest in your time in finding that. So tip number 4, get a plan. All right, a plan will give you purpose, not just for every day, but it will give you a purpose for your session. So every session for running should actually be about something. So you actually know what you're going to get from it. So you need to have clarity about what that session's about. So for me, sometimes, I might go for 3 months where it's just about being social, but I know that in my head, I'm just going out for the next 3 months to have a nice time and catch up with my friends. But then when I have a plan in place, so I want to do a 5K run or a 10K run or a 15K run, I have a plan and I tick those sessions off. I put them on my fridge and I tick them off, and there'll be all sorts of different sessions. So I'm not just doing the same session all the time. This will give you a routine, and a routine is really important when you're training. A routine, if you can stick that in your calendar and make that appointment with yourself, more important than anything else in that calendar, because this is a goal for you and it's really important, that will get locked in, and then that routine will become a habit. It will not only become a habit for you, but it also become a habit for your family, for everyone else around you. So for me, I've been running at 4:30 in the morning for the last 15 years. My whole family knows that I do that, and my dogs know that I do that. So they don't even raise an eyebrow. Everyone just lets me go. So that's my routine. Everyone knows I do it, and no one stops me ever. It's tailored to you. It's tailored to your run, and it's a very specific. So lock it in and tick it off. I went across to the Boston Marathon in 2013, and this is one that I was really excited to be in because you have to qualify to get into the Boston Marathon. And I remember being ever so tired at this stage. I had 2 young kids. I'd run about 3 marathons before. I was a bit naive about running at that stage. And I was training people 7 days a week. So I was really tired. So I was getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night and not enough. But I remember I had a plan and I only had 18 sessions left. And I remember this vividly. I got up one morning to run and I thought, right, 18 sessions, I can do 18 sessions. I will get these 18 sessions done. And then it was 12, and then it was 11, and then it was 10. And then when I lined up at that starting line, I knew I was ready. I knew I'd done the plan and it was complete. So do tick off those sessions. Like, I really encourage that because it's really motivating for yourself to know that when you get there, you're fine. And really, once you get to the starting line, you have done the marathon, essentially. If you miss a session because you're too tired or injured, you need to miss that session. So many people will continue with their plan and then their injury actually heightens. So number 1, stop, rest, recover. It's really important to work with someone on that plan to make sure that you don't hurt or injure yourself over that process. And if you're too tired, if your body's too tired, don't do the session. It's worse to do the session than to do the session. So, it's like anything. You have a plan and nothing ever goes according to plan. Success is not a straight line for anybody. Success is wobbly and you have to navigate obstacles, and you'll have to, particularly for a longer event, you have to navigate a lot of things, including your mental, your physical obstacles that get in the way. You're too tired. So that has to be part of the plan too. And you really just have to let it go and be okay about it because that's life. And, Olympians do that. They have to have breaks. You can't keep hammering your body. So you have to listen to your body first and foremost. So tip number 5 is choices. So life is a matter of choices and every choice makes you. These are really important. We all have choices that we make every day. Do you know we all make about 35,000 choices a day? Now that's an incredible amount of choices. So these choices, when you have a goal, so tip number 1, if you have a goal, they are all headed towards the same thing. So if your goal is very specific, you'll make changes to your diet every day just because you know that it's better to run if you don't drink the night before, or it's better to run if you don't go out all night. So incidental exercise often increases and your sleep is often better, your alcohol consumption is less, and your sugar too. So, you do make better choices if you have a goal. And I really do encourage you, no matter what you are thinking about goals or lifestyle, but we can all make changes and they're very simple changes. And like I said at the start, small steps equal big differences. So for instance, let's say walking. So if you did 7,000 steps a day, and then as opposed to someone who did 10,000 steps a day. So that's literally maybe half an hour difference of walking. That person will actually get over 1,000 kilometres more by the end of the year. So you can make small differences every day, small choices to lead you to that goal. And I really do know and have seen it over and over again that when people have a goal, they will get out of bed. If I see people in winter running, I know that they have a goal. So set goals, make new goals, and all of these will become easier for you. So tip number 6, a big one for me, it's quite special to me, is cross-training and strength training. Strength training is very important. It's very important for running. So the weight that goes through your legs, you need to have strong legs, essentially. You need to have a strong core. You need to have a nice strong chest for running. So I really encourage people to not just run for a number of reasons and to incorporate cross-training. So I do run an outdoor fitness group and the number of people that have started with me, and I think only because so many of us started undergoing all these different events and running marathons. We ran marathons around the world. So we've been to Boston, New York, Great Wall of China, Paris, and that's why Adventure Time travel started. I think why that happened is that belief, everyone just having that belief that they could do it, but also they were strong enough to do it. So it was interesting as we started this that many of us were faster than the people that just ran. And the only thing I could put it down to is that we'd done this cross-training, and everyone would come back from events to me and say to me, I just pass everyone on the hills. And, it's that cross-training, using hills, using different squats, doing different leg exercises, just not running. And also, it's for people who are just beginning, running can be boring, it can be scary. But if you start doing cross-training, your fitness increases. You're with a community of people. It's a lot of fun. So, I incorporate it into my week, definitely, without a doubt. So tip number 7 is control your time. So we all have 168 hours a week. So I'm not lucky to get up from 4:30 in the morning. It's just that's when the only time I could exercise with young kids. So it depends on your motivation about your time too. But it was really interesting that I did this activity, and I do this activity with a number of my clients. But this was a recent one with a woman who came to me and said, I'd really like to train with you, but I don't have a lot of time and I don't know how I'm going to fit it in. So we went through her time, and this is what she came up with: 49 hours of sleep a week, 40 hours of work. She had 15 hours of kids' activities. She had 20 hours of household activities, cleaning, shopping, cooking and dressing. And she had 10 hours of relaxing TV, catch up with friends. So that equaled 134 hours. So we were missing 34 hours in there. And she's still trying to find what is happening with those 34 hours. But now she's realised she can actually fit in 3 hours of exercise. So that's a really interesting exercise to do, and I really encourage you to sit down and do that. I did that with one of my children the other day, and it was very interesting because he found that he probably had about 15 hours extra. So now he's investing that into basketball out in the back court because he wants to get better at basketball. So small steps can make massive differences, and you can use that with your children too. So tip number 8, it's one of my favourite topics, diet. We are what we put in every day, and it contributes not only to how we look, but how we feel and how we think. So it was interesting. I'm going to share a story about me. I had alopecia in 2011, let's say. And so that's where your hair falls out. And so I was working with a lot of doctors, and they got to the point where I was just going to I had steroids put in my head. And it was to the point where my workplace was thinking about actually putting a hat on me, So it's actually happened to me 2 or 3 times in my life. So it's an autoimmune disease. But I then got in contact with a integrated doctor, and she changed my diet, and within 10 days, my hair grew back, which was absolutely amazing to me. And I then sent some of my clients to her, and their cholesterol levels dropped. There was one man who was on heart tablets for life. He came off those, and the Heart Foundation wanted him to be a representative because they'd never seen anything like that happen. I've seen it time and time again now with the people that I train because the diet wasn't anything special, and basically doctors are saying to people that I'm training, wow, your cholesterol's come down, it's a miracle. How did you do that in 6 weeks? But it's literally just diet and exercise. So, it's a pretty powerful thing what we put in our mouth. So for me, I would strongly recommend going to a dietitian, a sports dietitian, if it's in particular to a diet. But my quick tips for this is just reduce sugar or eliminate it completely. Reduce alcohol consumption in our society. We use it for everything, celebrations. I'm so surprised that people have it at 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old parties. It's everywhere. We're teaching our kids these habits that's what they need to do to celebrate. Everyone wants to first of all go and have their drink when their kid's 18. It's kind of something we've got to rethink. Why are we doing this? Because if we actually injected alcohol into our system, we'd actually die. It's actually a poison. I'm not a non-drinker, but I'm certainly in control of my drinking, and I know it affects my performance. And last of all, get a plan from someone. So I'll move on to tip number 9, which is a support team. Get a support team around you. It is so invaluable. I'm starting with the health practitioners. There's all sorts of health practitioners that can share their information and help you. I use different physios for different things. I use different chiros for different things, but I know that I go to them. I know that I have a massage once a week before I run a marathon or I run one of my events. So also get your family, like I spoke about with your routine, get them to support you. I've been doing this now for 15 years, and I know what an obstacle they can be if you don't involve them in the plan. So if my husband doesn't feel involved or that he's part of it, he can actually feel really upset by it. But if I involve him in it, and let him know how much I appreciate him, it is so much easier. And friends, we've got friends who don't want us to change. So some friends will say to you, I don't know who you are if you're not drinking. Like, how can we be friends? Or, why, I can't wait till this runs over because this is, affecting our social life. But if they're real friends, they'll want you to get to your goal and they'll want to celebrate with you. So gravitate to those positive people, and you'll see people that want to come with you and they want a piece of what's happening to you, because I can tell you now, once you've got a goal and you're really enjoying what you're doing, your whole life changes. And I mean, not just your physical and mental, but your whole life. Your relationships change, how you feel about yourself. I had a lady write to me the other day and she said, I've only been training with you for 10 weeks, but it's changed my life. And it's the first time that I've actually gone up against work and told them no, that I felt strong enough to say no. So, it's really important for you to understand that this is your foundation. This is your life. Your body was made to move. And it's such a wonderful thing. And the more you move, the better it becomes. And it's just like for me, for 15 years, I've been building my knowledge, my foundation, and I keep on layering it each day, and I'm finding new people that can give me information. So my last tip is sleep. This has been my nemesis, I guess, my whole training, and something that I've only really got through in terms of my learning. So when I started training, I had young kids, and I got obviously very excited with training and these events, and started running around the world and running marathons, and I actually forgave my sleep. So I wasn't sleeping. And what happened to me is I got quite tired, I got quite run down, but I didn't want to stop. And there became a point, I think when I started running my first marathon, I was actually quite small. And as I ran my marathons, I got bigger and bigger, and I was probably I was eating exactly the same, but my body was slowing down, and I knew there was something wrong. And I sought out so many doctors, so many integrated doctors, so many naturopaths, that I felt like I was a hypochondriac. But I knew, because of everything that I do, that there was something not right for me. And my blessing was, funnily enough, COVID. So in COVID, I got COVID in 2020. And from there, I developed chronic fatigue, where I actually couldn't get out of bed. I was so tired, I just couldn't get out of bed anymore. It came to the point where I nearly gave up my business. His and Her Time. I train a lot of people out there, and it was very hard for me, but I just didn't know what else to do. So I wrote to all of them and said, look, I just, I'm moving on. I have to try something else, get a job doing normal hours or something. But that night I had a cry, and I talked to my husband. I said, I can't do this. I love it. This is my passion. Health and fitness is my passion. I just can't leave it. So I didn't, and I wrote to them, and thankfully they all were, that I've got very loyal clients. Most of them have been with me for 15, 10, 12 years. So I'm very fortunate. But what happened from there, because I had COVID, I actually had access to some specialist doctors, and I was sitting in the waiting room of my respiratory doctor, and I read this little pamphlet, and it said about narcolepsy. And I said to him, do you think I could get tested for narcolepsy? He said, oh no, you couldn't have narcolepsy. You would be obese, and you wouldn't be able to get out of bed, and you would not have been able to run one marathon. By that stage, he was like, you've run 28 marathons, you run 2 businesses, you've got 2 kids, no, you haven't got it. I said, look, I've paid for my excess, so can you just send me to the hospital and let me get tested? So he did. So to cut a long story short, I came back. The doctor didn't think he'd see me again. He got me back in 4 days, and he said to me, basically, narcolepsy is like a scale of autism. You're on 1 to 10, and you're a 1. He said, I've never met anyone more extreme than you with narcolepsy. So that opened my eyes, and basically I'm now on medication for it, and I've lost the 12 kilos that I'd put on for those last 12 years, just like that, with not changing my diet or anything. So basically what my body had done, as far as I understand, was trying to slow me down, because I wasn't listening to it. I wasn't giving it the sleep, and the sleep, I really needed the sleep. So essentially I was getting slower and slower and heavier, and eventually, it really knocked me. So what I do say to everybody here is make sure you get enough sleep. Sleep is about recovery. resting. So at the moment, I'm resting more than I ever have. I'm running less than I ever have, but I'm still doing my weights and my sessions, but I'm lowering my heart rate and I'm losing more weight than I ever have before because my body is finally resting. So if you do know there's something wrong with your body, do persist, because we do know our own bodies, because you don't know how many doctors said to me, oh, your heart rate, I've got a resting heart rate of 39. My bloods are beautiful. I eat well, I don't drink. So basically I was healthier, I guess, than all of them, but I knew there was something wrong. So most adults do require between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So do try and get yourself that sleep. So I want to leave you with this. Small steps make massive differences. You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to do anything. But one thing I do encourage is that you are healthy, and that means that you are strong and that your body is fit. So find something that you love. Start off small. Just do, small little incremental runs, and you just build your base from there. But never be scared. I hate Strava, because people run to Strava and they injure themselves to no end because they want to show that they're doing 4.5-minute Ks, and you don't know how many people I've taken away that I know can run really well, but they get to the race because they've been beating themselves up trying to run faster than each other, that they're injured by the time they get there. So just take it slowly on yourself. Be very kind to yourself. Your body will get you to the end of your life, and I'm thankful that I'll now be awake for the next 40 years of my life instead of asleep. So to leave you with, these are my top training motivation tips. I will send them to anyone that wants them via a PDF. So I really want to thank you all. I encourage you to have a look at annaliptak.com. There you will find the movie, I'm Not a Runner. We've had worldwide acclaim with it. It was launched in New York for the New York Marathon, and that was at the Australian Embassy. And the amount of comments and messages, has been so heartwarming for us, because it is about ordinary people. And why we wanted to make it too is because we always see it about the elite and the beautiful, and we're always seeing through the media all these images that most of us can't ascertain. So we just wanted to show that you don't have to be elite. I mean, elite's wonderful, I'm not putting them down, but you don't have to be to achieve extraordinary things. Just give your body the chance to explore what it can do. I think there's a great quote from Socrates. He said, the biggest downfall for any man, and I say women, is that they never know what their body could do. I think a lot of the time people think they have to be fit before they exercise, which is a total misconception, because you have to exercise to get fit, and it doesn't matter. I think that's the biggest thing, is that we so often compare ourselves to other people, and that's probably the worst thing that we can ever do, is compare. But once you start exercising, you'll realise that it really doesn't matter about the person who's in front of you or behind you. It's about you, and all of a sudden you start feeling better. So I just encourage people to start, put that foot, make that phone call, get that step, start, because you're not going to get fitter staying home or not doing it. So just start.